Now I want to go into how much a transmitter is going to cost you. You can get your basic plain Jane transmitter, either Spectrum technology or 72 for roughly like $100. It's just going to be your basic 4 channels, and you'll get a receiver box with it in both cases. Or you can step up, and they have transmitters that have 10 model memories, where you can, like if you have an arsenal of planes, you can program it so each one is its own program, so you can have all your planes set up differently. You can set up how much the throw of your servos is, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. They're very confusing, but if you read your manual, you'll learn how to do it. Now, like I said, you can get the plain Jane ones for around $100. You can get the 10 model memory ones for around $200. But that's usually for a 4 to 6 channel transmitter. Now, if you have more channels, like I was saying earlier, with retractable landing gear, or who knows, you want to drop missiles or whatever, and you have more servos, every servo that you add is another channel that your radio must have. So, like I said, if you're just flying a basic ARF, you're only going to need 4 channels. But if you're flying something more advanced, it's going to be a lot more channels. So that's something to look at when you're looking at buying a transmitter and receiver for your plane. Alright, the last thing I want to tell you about transmitters is I didn't go to the full spectrum on how much they can cost. You can spend anywhere from $50 to $2,000 on a transmitter. Now, obviously, the one that's very expensive, the $2,000 one, is going to have probably 12 channels. It's going to do every little possible adjustment that you could possibly ever want to do. As far as it comes to an ARF trainer airplane, your plain Jane 4-channel transmitter or the 10 model memory one is going to be more than probably you'll ever need. Alright, we've talked about transmitters and receivers. I didn't really go into what your receiver does. Your receiver is your brain inside your plane. It tells your servos what to do because it gets the signals from the transmitter. Now, like I said, with the Spectrum, it's going to look different. This actually has a crystal in it, and this crystal matches up with the crystal in the transmitter, and that's what keeps the signal. Now, in a Spectrum, it just does it, like I said earlier, like a cell phone signal. Then, you're going to need 4 servos for a 4-channel airplane. You're going to have your elevator, rudder, throttle, and ailerons. Then you're going to need a battery to power your system. Also, I'm not sure if all planes come with the power switch, but you should have a power switch for the outside of your plane to be able to turn your servo power on and off so you're not wasting power out at the airfield in between flights. The next thing I want to talk about is the motor. The motors, you can pretty much put whatever size motor on the plane you want to, depending on how well it's built. If you have a brick shit house of a plane, I'm sure you can put like whatever size motor on it you want. I say, just for the sake of nobody sending me comments that they're really mad because they put a 90 size motor on a 40 size airplane, stick within the limits of what your ARF says. But I have seen 40 size airplanes with the 40 motor on it, with a 4.6 motor on it, and up to a 60 motor on it, and they've held together in the air. So I believe that you can go within those ranges for your airplane. It all depends on how much power you want. But the problem is the more power you have, the faster your airplane's going to go, and the more torque and stuff you can put on your wings. And if you have too much power, you can literally have your plane disintegrate in air, which isn't a cool thing.
You watched it happen.
I've seen it happen, yeah. My buddy was pulling loops way too fast with his plane, with a 4.6 motor on it. Next thing you know, the wing was flying off. I believe I have some of that on video. Alright, the next thing I want to talk about is, what is a servo? A servo is a small electronic motor that moves most likely just left or right, back and forth. Now, you have 3 components to worry about with your servos. You have your servo itself, which is the electronic motor. You have a servo arm, and you have your servo push rods. Now, your servo arm, a lot of them have holes in them from here to here. Now, what that does is when you put your servo push rod in the closest hole, it's going to give you the least amount of movement back and forth. Now, when you pull it on the very far edge of the servo, it's going to give you the maximum amount of movement. Now it comes the opposite on your flaps themselves for like your rudder and elevator. The closer it is to the flap, the maximum movement, and the farther out is the least movement. So if you have it on the inside on your flap and the outside on your servo, that's the maximum amount of movement. And if you have it the opposite, it's the least amount of movement. So when your plane's in the air and it's acting just way too maneuverable, you can't handle it, you can dial that back to be smaller adjustments that way. Also, if you have more expensive transmitters, you can adjust that on your transmitter. Okay, so we got the transmitter here. We have the receiver box powered, hooked up. The servos are ready to go. As you can see here, these little dials here, right here, and right here, and right here, and right here. These are all your trim settings. These trim settings are, what they do is they give you some movement back and forth to level out your ailerons, your rudder, your elevator, and your throttle. Alright, now if you look here at the ailerons, right now I'm going to move the aileron trim adjustment, which is this one right here. I'm going to move that left and right. You see the ailerons moving? Now that gives you a chance to adjust your plane, do the fine-tune adjustments on it before you take it off. For when you do that, it's going to make sure that your plane takes off nice and level and flies nice and level. And like I said, see, you adjust it here, back and forth, so that way that your ailerons, see here, are level with the wing on both sides. So your rudder is level with the tail section, and so your elevator is level with the tail section. And then with your throttle trim, you're going to want to make sure that it's at an idle state. As you can see, the throttle, when you move it up, it opens this hole right here in the carburetor, and that allows more oxygen to get in your thing. Also, it's sending more gas to your motor. So when you adjust that trim, you want it to be basically, I gotta come over there and look at it. You see the hole open up there? You're going to want it to be about there, just a little tiny opening for starting your plane. So you're going to want to adjust that with your throttle trim. See, that's all the way up on the throttle trim. This is all the way down. So that way, when your plane's in the air and you take it all the way down on the throttle trim, you can kill your airplane in the air, say if you want to do a dead stick landing or something like that, or you can throttle it or do your throttle trim up to make your plane idle faster. Alright, the next thing we're going to go over is how your servos should be turning in comparison to what your controller is doing. Now, when it comes to the elevator, alright, this is the only thing that's really backwards on a plane. When you pull down, your elevator goes up. Now, so when you're climbing with your plane, you're pulling down. When you're diving with your plane, you're pulling up. And you see how your elevator is going up and down. Now with a rudder, it's obvious, it's left and right. And with your ailerons, it's left and right. But the big thing to look at, and I have made this mistake. If you've seen the Alpha 40 videos, 3 of the crashes came because we were too stupid to realize that when you go left, the aileron should point up on the left side. When you go right, the aileron should point up on the right side. Please take that to heart, because you don't want to rebuild your airplane as many times as we have, because we were idiots. But yeah, so your ailerons should go, when you're going left, the aileron should point up on the left side of the wing. When you're going right, the aileron should point up on the right side of the wing. And the other one should do the opposite. So one's pointing up, the other one's pointing down. Now later on, when you get into higher channel airplanes, some airplanes will have flaps. And you'll also have multiple servos, so both of them can go down or both of them can go up, or in various situations like that. Alright, this concludes part 2 of the video.